Daniel Jeremiah at Move the Sticks of the famed Move the Sticks podcast with him and Bucky Brooks joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show, fresh off of calling the Chargers' victory over the Bears for the Chargers radio network last night. How are you, DJ?
I'm doing great, Rich. I just have an image in my mind of Carl Banks putting one of those little desks together that barely gets around each of your thighs when you settle into it.
Let me tell you something.
Would love to see that.
Daniel, the number of times I've banged my head underneath something that I've just Allen ranked together for my children that they don't use, I've lost track.
Yeah, I have. This is not a knock on IKEA because I'm sure there's lots of fine quality furniture that they made. But I have, at one point in time, as a young married person, halfway through putting a piece of furniture together, taken a hammer to the whole thing and thrown it in the trash. Yeah.
And you're a very mild-mannered man, so imagine what I'm like.
Dark place.
Let me just jump into it. Daniel Jeremiah, what do you think is going on in the front offices of the Minnesota Vikings right now? It was official as of about 20 minutes ago of this recording and this conversation that Kirk Cousins is done for the year. What do you think is happening there right now?
Well, I think it's not only kind of going over what your options are in terms of the players that could be out there on the street. I mean, you're talking about like the Colt McCoys, of the world, or the trade options, but then it's also saying, what's the landscape of where we are and the NFC as a whole? And are we right to try and, get rid of some assets in terms of draft capital to try and salvage this one? Or are we better to just say, hey, let's just get through this year and we look towards the future? Like, you got to kind of know where you feel you are. The sad thing, the suck of it is the NFC, the Eagles are there, but outside of that, the Niners have kind of come back to earth a little bit. The Vikings, and if they got Justin Jefferson back, I mean, they had a real shot at making a run here, man. So there's a lot they've got to kind of go through. I lobbed out the Trey Lance thing, which people on social media immediately freaked out over.
Well, don't mess with the Trey Lance, folks, man. I don't know what it is with him, and he's an outstanding young man with a huge upside from Minnesota. And also from the Shanahan system, which Kevin O'Connell is, not too far away from. It does make sense because you can't imagine it's much more expensive. I mean, Dallas gave up a fifth for him. You could tell Dallas, let's improve that by a couple rounds. Now you're not sitting on that pick on Saturday. You can actually use it on Friday night in Detroit next year. I mean, that makes sense to me, Daniel. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, back in the day when everybody was just flipping houses, they're just flipping quarterbacks. You sit on them for a couple months and you flip them and you end up making a nice little profit there if you're the Dallas Cowboys. And the way Dak's playing and what they look like, he's not going anywhere. So that's a way to kind of, you unloaded an asset and upped your draft pick. So for the reasons you mentioned, I think if you're going to make a trade in season for a quarterback outside the building to come in and play for you, he has to at least have been in scheme adjacent. He has to have some familiarity with what you do. And that is a very close line between the McVay line and the Shanahan line, where Kevin O'Connell came from. So that's why I kind of lobbed out that scenario with Trey Lance. And personally, you mentioned what a good kid he is. I'd like to see him get a chance to play. We don't know on him. Nobody knows on Trey Lance. I think it'd be fun to watch him go back to his hometown and get a shot.
So what do you think, now that I've asked you, is going on there? What do you think they should do? I mean, and tell me about the kid from BYU, Puka Nakua's quarterback, who actually is in the building. Tell me about Jaron Hall and this one answer about what you think they should do.
Yeah,
DJ.
Good athlete. He's a good athlete, and some similarities there to Trey from that standpoint because he can run the ball. But just a little bit inconsistent with touch, just a little bit up and down. He's strong, he's sturdy, he can drive the football really, really well. He's a good athlete. The Senior Bowl for him, I was hoping he was going to kind of just explode on the scene there and really take off. It wasn't a great week for him there. But there's some intrigue there with what he can do. And I know John Beck, former BYU quarterback who trained with Jaron, who's trained with Trey, trained with a zillion of these quarterbacks, but he is someone who spoke very highly of Jaron, and I'm a big fan of John. So I think you got something to work with there.
Well, so what do you think then they should do in Minnesota?
I would make the call on Trey Lance. That's me. I think that's the most intrigue and upside, to kind of use one of your words there.
Yep.
And I think, why not? Let's take a look. Let's see what we've got. I think he's the one that could be potentially available that could hit the biggest, if that makes sense.
Daniel Jeremiah, when we left the set in Kansas City after that draft back in April, if I had told you, sir, that Will Levis and Tyson Bagent would be the only rookie quarterbacks to win their first career starts by week 8, and Bryce Young and Will Levis would have their first career wins on the same day, you would have told me what, Daniel Jeremiah?
Probably had too much barbecue. Would probably be my reaction, which we did. What a great meal we had out there.
That's true. So both things can be true. Both things can be true. Okay.
Yes. But you know what? Again, how many times have we seen this story, Rich? How many times have we seen the guy in the green room waiting and those painful shots of him? And you do a great job of articulating it. That this is not the end of the story, man. This is just the beginning. And now he got to a organization with a great head coach that has a track record of success. And then he goes in the second round. He's going to, if this thing goes well for him, better to be an early second round pick than a late first round pick when it comes to the contract stuff. Like, what a great start for Will Levis. And I'm glad that, he's getting the opportunity. Let him go now. Just let him play the rest of the year. And let's see what you got.
So then do the Titans flip Tannehill? Maybe they call Minnesota. Should Minnesota call for Tannehill too? DJ, what do you think?
Well, I mean, you can definitely go for that. I just don't know. Tannehill, the feeling in talking to a lot of people around the league, not just my opinion, is that he's slipped pretty considerably here. So I don't know how much how much intrigue or excitement would be out there for him.
So including in Minnesota, despite what's going on, is what you're saying essentially.
I wouldn't dismiss it. All options on the table, but that just seems to be kind of the feedback that I've gotten.
And then cycling back to the rookie quarterbacks, your assessment of Bryce Young and CJ Stroud playing against each other and just everything writ large through half the season.
Well, I'm encouraged by Bryce from the standpoint that he's getting better. He's getting better every week on a team that doesn't really have a whole heck of a lot around him. I mean, thank goodness for Adam Thielen. He has been kind of his go-to there. But they need better players up front. They need more of a run game. They need, bigger, better receiver, quality. And he's fought through it. And Rich, you don't know with a guy like that. Like, he played at Mater Dei out here where what that, the talent they have there. He goes to Alabama, the talent they have there. You can believe in Bryce Young, but this is the first time in his life he's playing with inferior players. And that's why the wins haven't been there. But you're seeing him, tough it out, go through this adversity. He's getting better. He's still getting hit a ton. But I'm encouraged by that. CJ Stroud just came on the scene. He was rocking and rolling right away. This game was tough. There really wasn't much fireworks in terms of either offense. So this wouldn't be the game that you would point to as CJ Stroud's best. But I've seen plenty from him to know that they've got their guy there in Houston.
Daniel Jeremiah here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, you saw the Chargers destroy the Bears last night. Yeah. What's your takeaway here? Things are now fixed, or this is just an inferior opponent that the Chargers should have beaten? What's your 2 cents on the team that you see more than all, Daniel?
I would say 2 things. Encouraged for the Chargers, and that Bears team is terrible. They are bad. Like, they are 10 players away from being 10 players away. They don't have talent. I mean, they've got DJ Moore and they've got a couple good linebackers, but their offensive line, defensive line, not good. They aren't very good. So I'm not going to overreact to it from the Charger side of things, but they protected better. Herbert was dialed in. He kind of has made a change. Doesn't have that glove on that finger. So he looked a little more comfortable there. Austin Eckler finally starting to get healthy, get him involved in the passing game was encouraging. Been kind of waiting for Derwin James start making some plays. He has an interception. Bosa, who had a toe injury, he looks like he's getting a little bit of his burst back. There's players there, Rich. I mean, you know it. I mean, the Chargers have got players. And the schedule, and it's going to be a big one on Monday night coming up against your Jets. But they could get that one. They'd be at 4-4, and then you're right back in it. And, again, it's all in front of them. Their season's not over. It's not the start that they wanted. But I'm not going to say, oh, problem solved. They're fixed because of the quality of the opponent they just played.
And again, against the Jets, that is a big game for AFC playoff positioning halfway through the season here, because, man, I would have signed for 4-3 even with Rodgers being healthy, because of how difficult a gauntlet the first 6 games of the Jets schedule was and wound up being, and they went up 3-3 in that 6-game stretch. And then, thank goodness, there's no pictures in the standings, because that was as ugly as it gets yesterday. So what is your assessment of Zach Wilson and how sometimes he just still doesn't get it, like taking a sack on a 4th down on a do or die that it did appear to be. They didn't die in that 4th down sack. They still won it. But what's your 2 cents of the assessment of him?
Well,
DJ?
I'm glad you asked me, because this is a funny morning that I had. You know, when you're doing games, you're doing Charger games, I'm doing that night game, I don't get a chance to see the games on television as much. So I get to see the narrative before I see the tape.
Yep.
And so I see the narrative, and Zach Wilson is the worst quarterback that's ever walked the face of the earth. And so then I watched the tape this morning, and I rarely do this, but there's enough guys doing it. But I actually did like a 5-minute video kind of breaking down what I saw in the game and how I thought this was I thought not only was not bad from Zach Wilson, I thought it was pretty courageous and did some good things. And then everybody starts replying to me like, oh, you and Orlovsky, blah, 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 blah. So I immediately, I call Orlovsky. I'm like, Dan, did you do something on Zach Wilson this morning? He's like, yeah, dude, the tape wasn't bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did the same thing. Like, it was to the point where I felt compelled I needed to try and defend the kid. But when I watched it, Rich, as you know, you watched the game. You're playing in a driving monsoon. Let's start there. You lose your starting 2 centers. You're playing with your 3rd center in this game. Yeah. There's obviously no Dwayne Brown, no Vera Tucker, no Tippmann. Now you're down McGovern. Now you're down Schweitzer. You've got one wide receiver who's a stud in Garrett Wilson. You cannot run the ball like the Giants could actually run the ball. They couldn't throw it a lick. They had -9 passing yards. But Zach Wilson goes out there, throws for 240. There's probably 4 drops in that game that would have taken the total. There's the pass interference would have added on to that. He got pressured 25 times, most of it from Dexter Lawrence, who at 350 pounds is going up against the guy who was on your practice squad as a guard who's snapping you the ball. And he hung in there. And for all the talk over the last few years has been, man, our defense is so great. If he just doesn't screw it up, just don't turn it over. He's got 1 pick in the last 5 games. They played in a monsoon, and he rips 2 throws at the end. You talk about the terrible sack he took. That was terrible. The play before that, 3rd and 10, he hits Lazard for a conversion, and he drops it. So, I mean, it was just kind of all these different things. And even the last play of the game, Rich, the narrative was, oh, my gosh, Zach Wilson got bailed out. He's got a guy wide open. He underthrows it, and you get the pass interference penalty, and they kick the game winner. I posted the play. He got stroked. He got hit right in the teeth. He can't even follow through, but he hung in there and got the ball out there and gave him a chance to win the game. So I don't know. I think, and this is and me and Orlovsky are on the same page on this. You get fired up, but we're not putting him in the Hall of Fame. We're not even saying he was the right pick or should have been the pick at number 2. If you're watching him and you can't agree that Zach Wilson has gotten better, then I can't help you.
Okay. Look at you, Daniel Jeremiah, caping for Zach Wilson.
By the way, everybody goes, that's because you're boys with Joe Douglas. I'm like, Joe hasn't called me in 2 months. I'm pissed at Joe. Okay. So this has nothing to do with that.
All right. Daniel Jeremiah here on the Rich Eisen Show. In the few minutes we have left, what's your assessment of Brock Purdy suddenly having issues turning the football over? That's been quite the O. Henry-like plot twist to the 2023 season over the last 3 weeks. What's your view of him, Daniel?
I was talking to a GM yesterday. He brought up a great point, and he said, you remember the Matt Schaub Kubiak teams? That was, obviously Kubiak played for Mike Shanahan. It's the same offense. They were getting a lead early. They jump on you, they get leads, and then it was a nightmare to play against them because everything looks the same, run and pass, and then they hit you with that play action, and then they get after you. This 49ers team, as great as they are, and they're missing a couple key pieces, obviously, with Trent Williams and with Debo. Right. They're still a play from ahead type of a team. And they mostly do play from ahead because their defense is suffocating normally, and then they can get on you. When they're behind, which they've been in these games, Rich, those play actions don't get honored. You don't uncover guys wide open down the field. And now it becomes tighter windows. It becomes more of your skill set as a thrower comes into it in terms of being able to power the ball in. That's not who Matt Schaub was. That's not who Brock Purdy is. So that's the one concern with him or this team. Now, he's wired the right way. He competed his butt off. I think most games they're going to play with the lead. They're not going to be in this situation very often. Playing Joe Burrow coming off of a bye and dialed in is not ideal.
That's right.
But that's kind of the whole picture there.
Okay. So where are the turnovers coming from then? Like what are you seeing?
I think he's trying. He's forcing. He's trying to make too big of plays instead of just hey, sometimes you can live for kicks. Sometimes you can check the ball down, and trying to be too fine and maybe being a little overconfident in his arm there. So
okay,
I'm not going to get totally carried away. The Bengals to me were the bigger story than Purdy. The bigger story was if you're in the AFC and you saw that version of Joe Burrow, it was that's not good.
Right. I mean, again, I know we've got Dolphins and Chiefs on NFL Network from Germany in 6 days from now. Huge. Jacksonville's playing terrifically, and so are the Ravens. They're all 6-2. But that Burrow team, that was it right there. That's the one that was threatening, championships over the last couple of years.
Yeah, he is. I made this case to Bucky this morning, which was, look, the Dolphins are high flying. Like that is an aerial circus, what they can do. It is fun to watch. But I don't know if a team, when Burrow's healthy, gives you more to worry about, because Burrow, he has 4 conversions with his legs in that game. Tua, he's kind of a very reluctant runner for obvious reasons.
Yes.
That's not who he is. Burrow adds that to it. They move the pocket with him. Miami's got the 2 stud receivers. Well, Cincinnati's got 3. So they can hit you with that. Then they can get you with the screen game with Joe Mixon. They can go empty it out. I mean, they give you a lot to worry about. And that is a very talented defense, arguably the most talented defense in the NFL. And it was a hot knife through butter with Joe Burrow against those Niners.
Last one for you, DJ. In my position, I like to ask questions I think I know the answer to. I have no idea what the answer is to this one. And I need you to be unvarnished and truthful with me in a very sore subject for me. This is for fact, DJ.
Okay.
Talking to scouts, talking to all the people that you talk to in pro and college football, what is the general sense of what's going on with the University of Michigan Wolverines and everything there? What are you hearing? What's the sense? What are people saying, DJ?
2 different conversations.
Okay.
As you would, I'm sure, not be surprised. Nobody in the NFL cares.
Really?
I mean, come on. Because they've been, I've worked with teams, and it's just a different thing. You're allowed to go scout opponents in the NFL.
Right.
You got to you're trying to get everything you can. Obviously, they have the headset communication, which to me is the takeaway from this whole thing. What are we doing? Just put the headsets in and let's be done with this whole thing. And then, you'd listen to TV. You'd listen to TV copy to see if I can hear the audibles from the quarterback and what can we get from that? Like that's kind of always been a part of the NFL game. So they don't, look, it's against the rules 100%, shouldn't have done it. But the NFL community just kind of shrugs their shoulders. Okay. Whereas the college community is, it's unnecessary, more than anything else. It's excessive and it's unnecessary and more just dumb, whether or not how connected this guy was. Stallions, by the way, that's an interesting choice. I know how hard it is to get into the Naval Academy with kids who are college age, and I know how sought after they are for employment after they get done. I know one thing: if I had that education in my back pocket, I would not be traveling to college football games with my iPhone and videoing them. That's just but
apparently I hear you. But apparently he was hiring others to do that, and then Venmoing them, and that's
subbing it out.
Yeah, I guess is what it seemed like to me. But so you're saying the NFL is like shrugging because, they're used to that sort of scouting, and if it's against the rules, is whatever. But college football, they're people pissed up in arms, or just think it's what does it mean? Like, then let me ask you this: what does it mean? What do you think Michigan was in fact gaining from it? If you don't mind me asking.
That's why, and I'm not pandering here, obviously.
Sure.
I watched them play, and I watched them physically beat the snot out of everybody up front.
Right.
And I just don't think that there's some piece of information that's the reason why Aiden Hutchinson just put the Ohio State tackle on his backside. Like, I don't see the connection there. So that's why I'm not. There's people that are obsessed with it, Rich. Like every article, every new piece of information. This sounds bad. I don't care. I just don't. They have a bunch of NFL players. They're big, they're strong, they're physical, and they beat people up. And this was just a dumb thing they got caught up in, is my opinion.
No, and I that's why I did not know, and I value your opinion. I did not know what your answer was going to be. And for anybody who thinks that you might be pandering, my gosh, I don't know if I have had a top 5 people in my life that love to just stick it to me when it comes to the Michigan Wolverines. You're in the top 5, DJ. You're in the top 5, Mr. Appalachian State. So you're
that's encouraging, because I figured Breer has 3 of those spots locked up.
Yes, he does. He's in the Hall of Fame already. Prior to his retirement, he's in the Hall of Fame. DJ, thanks for the time. Greatly appreciate it. You're the best.
Thanks, buddy. Good to see you, man.
Move the Sticks. Everybody follow him, and of course his podcast that he mentioned with Bucky Brooks called Move the Sticks is must listen to. Get it where all podcasts are available. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.